Palanite Enforcers have been my gang of choice over the last 6 months, and I'm still in the middle of a pretty hefty campaign playing with them. However, I think it's time for some change. So in this video, I'm going to close this chapter by building and painting the Sanctioner pattern Automata, both of them. And it'll be quite a bit of fun. A nice little way to say goodbye before moving on to something a little bit more spicy. My name is Matt. This is my beard. Welcome to the video. Let's get into it. So, whilst I'm waiting for these guys to just finally finish off drying, these are the paints that we're going to be using in this video. So I have undercoated them in the Colourforge Steel Forged Silver. It is their metallic, and it's pretty much near as makes no difference to Lead Belcher, albeit a tiny little bit brighter, but on application from a spray perspective, it really lands on the model quite nicely, so it's pretty decent. Just on the standard Citadel range, we're going to go with Brass Scorpion for some of the details. Same with Lead Belcher, that's just going to be detail work again. Eshin Grey is my main sort of colour when it comes to my my Palanite Enforcers. And then obviously we've got Baden Black and Avalanche Sunset. Those are the two that we use for the hazard stripes. And then Moot Green finally for the eyes and lenses. Now there are a couple of paints up this end of the spectrum which are a little bit different, but they are equally necessary for this to look really, really cool. So the Typhus Corrosion, I use that for weathering, and that's going to go mainly around some of the joints, but predominantly the feet. Obviously a lot of corrosion will occur on the feet of a large sort of metal man or a large automata, based on the fact that that's going to have a lot more ground contact and you can't guarantee that the ground's going to be dry. Second to that, we've got Turbodork's Dark Ritual. So this is actually quite an interesting paint in the sense of it colour shifts. I've used that to do some accent on my Palanite Enforcers, and it's really quite popped quite nicely. I wouldn't normally go into a colour shift paint, however I tried it out on just a handful of the Enforcers first and foremost, and it worked perfectly well. It looked quite nice, and it gave a bit more, just a bit more pop to the model itself, bringing the colour scheme up brighter somewhat. However, on the opposite side of that, we've got Villainy Inks Dystopian Brown. So this is an ink wash, or an enamel wash rather, and what you do with this, you do something called a reductive technique. So effectively I'm going to be applying it to all of the exposed metal parts, the parts that aren't covered by like block colour. So it's going to be predominantly the metal parts, and it's going to be covering 100% coverage first and foremost. Going to leave that to dry for a little bit. Then I'm going to come back in with some white spirits or mineral spirits and a little cotton swab. I'm going to take off the excess, and what that does is it leaves a nice grime in all of the recesses, giving that extra level of weathering. So we've got a couple of different weathering techniques going into this, as well as just a handful of Citadel paints as well. Not to mention, and not to forget, our Lord and Saviour, Nolan Oil. I've made a bit of a conceited effort anytime that I go into GW now to get myself another pot of Nolan Oil. I go through this like I don't know what, because I mean I've been using it quite a lot on larger scale things at the moment, such as my my gaming tiles, but ultimately you can never go wrong with a decent amount of Nolan Oil. So that's the colour range that we're going to be using. As I say, I'm going to jump straight onto the bases first and foremost, get those hazard striped up, weathered down, get them prepared, and then once that's all done and dusted, I'm going to move on to these two guys. I ended up going for the Assault Ram and also the Concussion Cannon. I think they're going to be quite cool. And from a stance perspective, I have got them both leaning forward on their right foot. However, I did a little bit of adjustment because you have a ball and socket joint, which is quite rare on a GW model. So what I did there was I basically just adjusted the arms so they weren't looking exactly the same. So as you can see on the left one there, he's kind of hunched forward a little bit as if he's in motion, whereas the right one, he is kind of stood a little bit more stoically and a little bit more in stance, ready to shoot off the concussion cannon. So that's where we're at with the paint side of things. So I'm just going to jump straight onto the bases. I've now blocked in the black on all parts of both bases outside of the rim. And now what we're going to do, the hazard striping. So the hazard striping, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. I prefer using a transfer sheet like this. You can buy them off of Etsy, off of eBay, and model suppliers on the internet as well. I got mine off of Etsy for around about £6, and I've just cut a small part of it off. And what I do, I get a brush, semi-wet, pop it in the yellow, and I've just affixed this to the base using a little bit of blue tack. So I'm just going to hold this down, and basically it's a stipple, and you're using the template to just hold it still. Now you did see it rocking back and forth there, but that's not a problem, because what we'll do once it's off, we can then see that it's actually worked perfectly. And then all I'll do now is, once that's dry, I'll go back in, sharpen up my lines, and take it from there. What I will do, however, is just whilst it's like that, I'm just going to push the paint along there, just using the paint on my brush that I've still got on. Get a little bit more thick, because obviously with yellow you do have to have it down quite heavy. So I'm going to crack on with the rest of these, and then we shall continue with the base. We're now at this stage here, so all the stripes are in. I have them all pointing towards this central square on both of the bases themselves. However, it's still looking quite rough. Now bear in mind that this is really early stages, so I'm going to go back in now with the black to sharpen up the lines, and then I'm going to go on to the Nuln Oil, so the first wash with the Nuln Oil. This is just only the first wash, and it does end up layering on alongside the other weathering elements that I'm going to apply. So let's see how it looks once it's done. And as if by magic, here we are. So both bases have been sharpened up, they look a hell of a lot better now. So I'm now just going to go on to the first stage of weathering, which is a little bit of typhus corrosion in certain areas on it. This will be random, it's not going to have any sort of like direct pattern, or it is purely, I'm just going to chuck it on first and foremost, give it a quick dry, and then I'm going to go on to the Nuln Oil. Now I'm going to do all of this off camera because the Nuln Oil does take a little bit of time to dry, but once it's done you'll see the effect. So this is just the typhus corrosion. So as you can see, I've liberally applied it, and I've just stippled it on as well with the older brush. Same with this base as well. So that one looks pretty decent. This one's a little bit more caked than this one, but that's fine because that variance really kind of gives the random idea of what I was trying to purvey earlier. Let's get on with another Oil. And there we have it. So the bases are now done. I've added the rims, and I've applied the Nuln Oil. Now as you can see, the typhus corrosion has really dried quite nicely, and it still lets through some of the yellow, which is a breaking colour, and that really helps just define what's actually going on the base itself. So I'm quite happy with how these have turned out. These are now ready, so let's move on to the automata themselves. Now that the bases are done, it's time to tackle these two guys. So to do that, I'm going to have a little quick look at my previous ambot, which is just an ambot. It's nothing more than that. Just to give you guys an idea creatively as to where I'm going with this. So this is the Joker. It's just a regular ambot, but as you can see, I've brought in the Eshin Grey, which is the main armour. Obviously we've got hazard striping on the shoulder pad here and on both claws. Green highlights on the lenses and the eyes. But then also, as you can probably see, there is that colour shift Turbodork Dark Ritual on the shoulder pad there, and also on the knee, and I think that's pretty much everywhere. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have a little look at the composition of these two models, and we'll make some creative decisions as to where things are going to go. So first and foremost, I think with there being an armour panel on the middle bits here and here, I think they should most likely go down the Eshin Grey route. I think having Eshin Grey on both the middle parts and also the side parts as well, I think that solid colour will really help. Just identify the models as what they are. And what we'll do, we'll integrate some of the lead belcher chipping into that as well, just to give a bit more weathering. I think on one shoulder pad, I'm going to put the Dark Ritual, so the Turbodork Colour Shift Dark Ritual, but then also on the claw hand, or the claw side, I think I'm going to put a hazard stripe on here. Now, as per my sort of general painting scheme when it comes to the Palanite Enforcers, almost all of the models have a small discus, which is just on this part here. So this discus, that is also going to be the Turbodork. And what else do we have on this model? So we've got a large engine area at the back. I think these circles here will be also, I'm going to do the Turbodork stuff on there. The bottom panels here, they're going to be the Eshin Grey, down with Northern Oil. And I think that's pretty much it for the panel side of things. Just looking at the tops, nothing really to note there. And looking at the legs, nothing really to note there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's going to be a relatively simple scheme, but I think once it's built up and done, it's going to look absolutely brilliant. So let's crack on. Let's see how it all goes down, and we'll take it from there. And this is where we find ourselves. So I've applied the Eshin Grey to where I want the Eshin Grey to go. I'm quite happy with the coverage. It did require 2 or 3 coats just to get that nice smooth coverage that I was after. However, now we are at a stage whereby we're starting to go down into the detail work. Block colours are something that I tend to do first. It gets most of the coverage out of the way, and then you're just refining that coverage from there. So from here, I need to do 2 things. I need to, on these shoulder panels here and here, I need to basically do a black wash. So do a thick black coating of the Abaddon black. Same with this discus here. And I'm also going to, I think I'm going to have a little look at the faces of both of them to see where how I'm going to actually finish them off. I still haven't made that decision as of yet. I'm going to put some black all over the hand as well, just this armor plate here, as I've decided that I'm going to do hazard stripe on this side and hazard stripe on this side. The reason why we need a black on this shoulder pad and this discus here is because for the color shift paint to work, you actually need to have a black surface to work from, and that reacts quite nicely with the actual coloration of or pigmentation rather, of the dark ritual, coupled in with the very fine metallic pigment to give it that sparkle. So I'll be doing black on here, 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 and here. I think I'm going to do a partial covering on this side here, but I haven't made that decision just yet. Outside of that, I don't think there's anywhere else on the model that I need to put any black, so that's pretty much all the black we're going to do. I think I may also go back in and do this outer discus. I'm going to do the Eshin Grey. I'm also going to do the inner discus as the Turbodork's Dark Ritual. So let's crack on with that. So I'm pretty happy with how these are turning out so far. They are looking really quite sharp. I've just done a couple of little detail bits with just sharpening my lines really, just so we're ready for the next stage. I've left the wrist plate as well, a silver. I think that's going to just add a little bit more dynamicism to the actual model and the overall effect. But overall, both of them, they're looking pretty good. So we're now going to go in with Turbodork's Dark Ritual. Now, as I say, this is a colour shift, so there's a different way that we do this. Now, I've got myself a little silver ball there. Just going to give this a good quick shake before we go. Now, it does have a nice little ball bearing in there, just to give it a bit more agitation when you give it a shake. So it's a small little applicator like this. And we're just going to drop a bit in there. Now, you can see that it is a little bit pearlescent. I don't know if that's been picked up on camera because of the light, but it is quite pearlescent in look. Now, to go in, we are just simply going to get a slightly wider brush or larger brush. So I'm using an Artis Opus size 2. It's from their S range, and slightly wet the brush, and I'm going to apply it quite liberally onto the brush. So quite a thick paste-like consistency there, and we're simply just going to apply it to the areas where we want it. Trying to be careful keeping in our lines. And it does run quite far, this, so we just want to get it as far and as wide as we can with what's on our brush. Again, just being quite conscious that we don't want to overstep the edges. Making sure that we are getting full coverage. And there we are. So that is currently quite dark, but it will brighten up in a moment. Now, you do have to apply it once or twice just to give full coverage and also to ensure that you are being as thorough in the actual paint job as you can be. However, once it dries, it actually looks amazing. So again, just going in on this discus, making sure that I'm getting full coverage, decent spread. We're quite fortunate in that this discus does have quite a rigid edge, so we're able to just push around that edge quite nicely. And then I did decide obviously to do the back as well. So again, nice amount on the brush. I'm just going to apply it to the centre of this discus. And once it's all done, it should look something like this. Once it's dry, it looks absolutely great. I've applied it to the shoulder pad, the discus at the front and the discus at the back on both models, and it's looking really good. Quite happy with how this is turning out so far. So our next stages are quite simple, and it's just simple detailing work. So on the shoulder pad and the gauntlet, I'm going to apply the hazard striping. So I'm going to freehand those as opposed to using a stencil, just because they are curved areas, and it'll be easier for me to do it by eye than it will be to try and mould quite a rigid plastic stencil around that. So we'll do the hazard striping on the shoulder pad and gauntlet, then we'll move into the optics and the lenses, which is the mood green. And then we're finally going to dull everything down with the Nuln oil, and we're going to also add some typhus corrosion to the feet and the bottom shielding. And finally, we'll move into the villainy ink. So I'm really happy with how these two are turning out. Now, I've made a creative decision here. I've compared the two Sanctioner pattern automatas to my Enforcers, and colour and contrast wise, they're absolutely perfect. They hit the nail on the head. They're exactly how I want them to look. Now, as they're actually, thematically speaking, they're designed specifically to aid the Enforcers themselves, I've made the creative decision not to actually apply the villainy ink to these two models specifically. It's not because I don't believe that the product's worthy of the models. I think the product's absolutely amazing. I love villainy ink. I sing from the rooftops. But I think thematically speaking, it doesn't actually make sense. The automata, so the actual regular automata, it's a retrofitted mining rig. That's the whole point of them. So they're going to be more grimy, they're going to be more weathered, they're going to be a lot more rusted to a degree, whereas the Sanctioner pattern automata are specifically designed with crowd control and crowd management in mind, so therefore they wouldn't naturally have seen the wear and tear that a regular automata would have seen. So in this instance, I've decided against using villainy ink for the time being. However, I'm now going to do a few bits and bobs off camera, just a little bit of detail work, adding some of the brass scorpion to parts of the weapons, just doing the ammo casings in the red and whatnot, just the final little bits of detail, whilst also adding the typhus corrosion to the feet and the bottom armour plates, so adding a little bit of weathering in there. But outside of that, I'm really happy with how these have turned out. They're so close to being done. I can't wait to show you guys. And to be honest with you, for you guys, I'm showing you right now. Well, they look absolutely phenomenal. I'm really, really happy with how they came out. I think the weathering on the feet and just the random splatter of weathering of the typhus corrosion across the body as well and the rest of the armour, I think it just really brings the model into what I wanted it to be. I wanted to add a little bit of weathering, but not too much to overdo the model. And comparatively to the automata that I already have, or the Autobot rather, or Ambot rather, not Autobot, the Ambot, I think they look perfect for their function. Overall, I've really enjoyed the full process from start to finish. I think the finished product is perfect for the Palanite Enforcers, and it's actually a really nice way to round off the Palanite Enforcers that I have. I think the only time I would probably revisit the Palanite Enforcers is if I decided to go down the ash waste route, which is something that I'm quite keen on doing, to be honest with you. I think there's some quite cool things you can do with the ash waste, but it's an area of Necromunda that I don't necessarily know that much about. So that would be quite fun to do. So all I want to say is thank you very much for watching, guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed making this video, and I think I'll refine my process as time goes on. And the production side of things, I think it was quite well. I think that the overall product, or finished product rather, of the actual models themselves, they look great. Outside of that, I think that's pretty much it for now. So if you've liked the video, please feel free to drop me a like. If you're new around here and you haven't done so already, please feel free to subscribe. I'm looking to try and get to 100 subscribers by Christmas, so that'd be pretty cool. And outside of that, I hope you enjoyed it. I've been Matt, this has been my beard, and have a good day.